Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Talent Talk Live. I am Nelly Valinden. I am your host today, and I hope that everyone is doing well. First of all, don't hesitate to say hi to us in the comments on LinkedIn and let us know where you're watching from because we really appreciate it. With me here today, as you can see, is Dennis Valkema, General Manager Benelux at TalentTalk. Good morning, Dennis.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Nelly, we seem to have a little issue with your sound. At least I heard a hiccup. I hope you can hear me well.
I can hear you well.
Oh, now your sound is better as well. So it's the technical sanity check. Welcome, everybody, and great to be here. And also an honor to kick off the HR Trends 2021 together with Nelly this morning. So it's exciting.
Definitely. So what we'll be doing, I'm going to try and talk a little bit slower then. What we'll be doing, Dennis and I will talk about what humility has to do with work, and we'll discuss building soft skills, enabling growth and development, and developing empathetic managers, among other things. We'll do that for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have 15 minutes to answer as many of your questions as possible. So if you have any question or thought you want to share, please do so in the comments on LinkedIn. Dennis, I don't know if you want to say a few words about yourself before we get started.
Yeah, sure. What I do for those of you that don't know me, that I haven't had the pleasure to meet before, I'm the general manager for TalentSoft in the Benelux, meaning that I support and facilitate the Benelux team in operating as good as possible, serving our clients and ensuring that TalentSoft is well presented, and not only well presented, but also well appreciated, which is our main goal in this region.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
Before this, I've worked in the HR and IT industry for a long time, so I come with a ton of experience and an interesting network with lots of very interesting people that I had the pleasure to meet to meet them very often. And now during the pandemic, it's all gone digital, but still have the pleasure of meeting and talking to a lot of you.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. So the topic today is humility and what it has to do with work. Perhaps it's good I give a little bit of context first about humility. So at TalentSoft, we identify each year what we believe will be the trends, the HR trends for the year to come. And humility is one of the big themes that we identified for 2021. Why? Because it is not always easy to be humble at work and to say, I don't know. But if there's one thing I think that we've learned this year, it's that we don't always have the answers, and it should actually be more acceptable and normal to say that you don't know something at work. And this goes hand in hand with being allowed to make mistakes and to learn from them together as colleagues and as an organization. So that is the context behind the humility theme. Now, Dennis, I have a first question for you, perhaps a rather personal one, which is how humble are you in the workplace?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to ask. Maybe you should ask the people that I work with. But if I try and answer from my perspective, at least, I am at least very aware that being humble adds a lot of value to the way you work as an individual and the impact it has on team and an ecosystem around you, meaning partners, clients, etc. So every evening I brush my teeth and look at myself in the mirror. I at least try to remember that I have worked that day in a way that that suits me and that suits with the values that I think are important. And being humble is definitely one of the most important of them.
Yeah, Dennis, why do you think that for so many of us, it is difficult to be humble at work?
Well, It can have to do with insecurity for starters. The knowledge that making mistakes is allowed, and that actually it's the most important way to learn and to develop yourself, is something that is not well adopted yet in a lot of businesses and in a lot of organizations. For me, it's actually one of the first things that I emphasize when having interviews with candidates or when talking to people that I work with from all corners of our organization or even outside of the organization. I think it's actually very important to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. But if you feel
Absolutely.
insecure and if you don't have that feeling that that you have that space to learn, to develop by making mistakes, people can get stressed or even cramped by admitting those mistakes, and therefore may overperform themselves or over present themselves in a way that that pushes humility to the background.
Absolutely. Now, if we talk about skills for a little bit, then in a predominantly virtual environment, as the one that many of us find ourselves in since this year, more and more so, it becomes even more important that we know the basics of collaboration and communication. And this is where soft skills and building soft skills comes into play. Perhaps, Dennis, we can first start with what you believe to be the most important soft skills at the moment.
So, as I said in one of my previous answers, I think humility is definitely important. It's one of the most important soft skills at the moment. Being empathetic is a very important soft skill as well. Because if there's one thing that this enforced digital environment has done with us, it literally gives insight in people's private atmosphere. You can literally see my home office at this moment. And sometimes when I'm working here, my kids walk in or my dog starts barking, and that's just my home. And everyone has a home and everyone is working from that home. So you have an insight. So if there's one thing that this entire digital working environment has brought us, is that even though we are working remotely, we are closer to each other than ever before. Because it's not all about work. It's also about the kid that you see in the background, or that book that you can see in my bookshelves. Like, hey, I've read that, or whatever. So what it does, it surfaces the importance of having a more social connection or even an emotional connection with the people you work with. For that, in order to do that, you need to be culturally sensitive. Working in an international environment, understanding each other's culture, each other's customs, each other's habits is very important. And trying to understand that, having an interest in each other, and that all boils down to empathy, having the interest in each other, and having understanding for each other. And giving the other space to actually be the individual that the other is.
Yes, and we'll talk about empathy a little bit later on in this episode. I'm just going to turn to you, our lovely audience, this morning once again, because I have a few more questions for Dennis myself, and then we will be able to answer your questions. So what are your thoughts on humility, empathy, soft skills? Do you have any questions? Please don't hesitate to share them with us in the comments, and then we'll get to them by the end of the episode. Dennis, back to you. I think something that is very important to emphasize is that not knowing is not the same thing as not trying, and that humility also means being open to learn new skills, as we just spoke about. However, when it comes to learning new things, that also means taking risks. And in the workplace especially, not everybody is keen on taking risks. So how do you think that HR and managers can create an environment that encourages this kind of risk taking?
Well, for me personally, the way I try to achieve it is to give my team as much freedom as possible. They have the freedom to make their own decisions. They have the freedom to work in the way and in the pace they like. I'm very result driven. Therefore, I don't mind how they get from A to B. It's their decision making, and that means that they will go over bumpy roads sometimes. And hopefully, I can coach them and mentor them and help them and guide them, and hopefully, they will feel safe enough to actually ask for help. And I think they do. And that's, I think, where the true value is, because that comes down to soft skills again. You have to give each other space in order to get to better results, because we're all very bright and intelligent and unique people, and the uniqueness of every individual adds to the team result in the end.
Definitely. And I think when we talk about mistakes and being able to make mistakes, I heard something very interesting the other day, which was that perhaps we need to think differently about mistakes, and perhaps we should not think of them as a mistake, but as a learning moment instead. So I think it would be fantastic if within organizations we could look at them as learning moments, asking people, what did you do? What did you learn from it? What happened, and what did you learn from that? Which is a different way of thinking about mistakes, and I think a little bit more of a positive way as well. Now, Dennis, I have another question for you, which is actually about managers. Now, managers always play an important role in setting the right example. You're a manager yourself, so I imagine that over the past year, you had to come up with ways to keep your people happy, motivated, and productive, and all that while being remotely. So you mentioned it a few times already, Dennis, but how important was it for you to be empathetic during all that?
Yeah, I think it's very, very important. And as I said before, working remotely is actually bringing people closer together. One of the things that you see is that having a one-to-one chat from each other's living room, from your home office or from your bedroom or wherever you're working today, brings a one-to-one connection with the individual on the other side, where normally you may not have the opportunity to talk directly on a one-to-one, and therefore you can open up. And people, if you give the trust that they're actually doing a good job and that they're actually exploring in a good way. And I often use the examples of kids, how kids learn. They learn by falling and stepping up again and moving forward. That's what we need to do. And I think as a manager, we need to encourage that. And having that one-to-one connection in the safe environment of distance, literally physical distance, but still being able to literally see in each other's lives and have that close connection digitally helps to create a safe environment to have conversations about what does it do with you as an individual? How do you develop yourself? What have you learned? What was good? What was not good enough? Or what would you do differently the next time? And I think that last question is probably the most important of all the questions. It's what would you do differently next time? Because that means you've actually learned something.
And I think it's fair to say that being an empathetic manager will be something that will remain very important, will become perhaps even more important in 2021 and beyond. Perhaps, Dennis, we could say a little bit about how could we develop empathetic managers? Do you have any ideas on that? Are there tools we can use, or is it more about a mindset? Is it a combination? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a combination of many factors. One is awareness, being aware that it is something that's actually not a nice to have, but a need to have. making it one of your top priorities as a manager, being that you're empathetic and that you are facilitating and serving your team rather than telling them what to do. The difference between leadership in general and being a boss is becoming more and more important almost on a daily basis now. There's a lot of collaboration tools that popped up over the course of this year. Everyone is now working remotely. We even have tools that that facilitate managers to have an on-the-spot development conversation or performance conversation with their team, not to continuously assess the other, but to have continuous insights in how people work, what they are doing well, and that really supports in giving compliments and being aware that there's so much that we didn't see in the past that we actually start to see now, and having that holistic view of the combination of what happens at home, the impact that the environment has at the way people work. So that's that social connection that we see growing. And on the other side, the actual work that people do and having that continuous insight through their peers, through the people they work in with projects or other managers that they are connected with, sideways or whatever, it really helps in understanding the other and being more able than ever to facilitate the other. So that continuous conversation is crucial, I think.
Thank you, Dennis. Great answer, if you ask me. The last question from me for Dennis is going to come up soon. So once again, don't hesitate, don't be shy. Share your questions or your thoughts on the humility theme in the comments. And then the last question I have for you, Dennis, is, do you believe that organizations are ready to embrace humility at work?
More than ever before would be my answer. So there's obviously a difference between organization and organization. But I think if there's one positive thing that this entire pandemic has brought us, is that we're moving very fast and innovating very fast in the way we collaborate, and that there's a permanent change currently happening, and that more and more organizations are embracing the change, because there's actually something very positive happening, and it's the human factor in the work that we started to automate more and more. And I'm not talking about robotics, but I'm more talking about, we've done this for 10 years and it was always successful, so let's continue doing it. But the world is changing and we're seeing that. So yes, I think companies are embracing the change and are ready to make the change if they haven't made it already.
I very much like the answer because it's positive. I think we can go to some of the audience questions now, Dennis. So I have the first one here for you. And the question is, what can you do if your manager is not humble and or lacks soft skills?
We talked about insecurity, and managers are also people. It's a surprise maybe to some of us, but managers are also people. And jokes aside, maybe give the right example, because managers want to learn as well. And if learning is really at the core of what you do, then have that conversation. Be bold. And if it's a mistake, then you've learned from that mistake.
Yeah. I think you're right. And I think when it comes to managers, there has been a lot of changes for them this year as well. So I think we should probably also be a little bit patient with them. And indeed, as you say, Dennis, I very much like that idea to learn both ways, and that learning is not a one direction kind of a process. So yeah, let's try and give a good example ourselves.
Maybe to add, from a manager's perspective, being a manager myself, I cannot change what I don't know. So I always encourage my team, tell me, be blunt, be straight up, and tell me if there's something that I do in a way that I could do better. Educate me, because that's the only way that I can improve myself, and that's the way we improve our organization.
Absolutely. I think for now, those are all the audience questions, unless there are some last minute questions coming in, but I don't see that happening for now. So then it's then just out of curiosity from me to you, what theme are you most excited about for next year when it comes to the world of work?
I think as a theme, I think humility is spot on. For me, it is definitely the most important one. As a whole, I think the development of soft skills and having that continuous conversation with each other, bidirectional, is crucial, and I'm very excited about it. I think having that continuous talk track with each other, rather than sitting down once or twice a year talking about how did you do in the last 6 months, you lose so much insights in each other, and now you start to build a connection with each other. So I'm really excited about that.
Me too. And I think that's a beautiful ending to our conversation as well, Dennis. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today, for sharing your thoughts with us. And then to our audience this morning, if you enjoyed the topics that Dennis and I discussed today, so humility, but also empathy, I've got good news for you, because today we came out with our HR Trends for 2021. So we've got a fantastic video where we'll talk about the 4 big trends we identified. We will share the link to that video in the comments on LinkedIn. We also prepared a fantastic ebook for you that you can download. For that one, we'll also share the link in the comments below. And last but not least, we prepared a blog post about our trends for next year. So if you're curious to find out what the other 3 trends are, you can choose. There's something for everybody: a video, an ebook, or a blog post. And then I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning. Stay safe, and I hope to see you soon for a new episode of Talent Talk Live. Thank you very much, and goodbye.